we are doing. That's our current car, how we use it. But the same sensors under different conditions have a much tougher time when we are here. So while on the one hand, humans, who 90% of them think that they are better than average in their driving skills, in fact provide 9 of 10 accidents because of their own mistakes, we are very far in preventing these accidents from happening. But in between these accidents, for instance on German autobahns, people go 7 million kilometers statistically without an accident and do the same good job as the average people do with autonomous car. It's quite a challenge. And that's why we have to, even under those conditions, be perfectly fine and reliable with all our sensors. The sensors are the senses of the car. As important, of course, is the brain of the car. And that's another very exciting development. For a long period of time, we try to automate things by adding up thousands of rules how these things should react in certain situations. And for instance, Google had a program which was based on these rules, which was able in 2 weeks to figure out that in their YouTube videos, most of them showed cats. And they were able to understand this is a cat with all these rules which they got. But meanwhile, we're able, with deep learning, to apply what the brain does, which means connect their synapses in the form that they learn from experience and build on that. That, for instance, this image detection now can work in minutes. When they just see a few cats, they learn that is a cat by looking at the similarities and the differences. And while these neurological systems, as we just saw briefly in the picture before, are very complex to explain, we are simple and clear, meanwhile, how to use and how to apply them. And the picture or the little video you saw before has shown that by now we can, in our cars, have these deep learning algorithms which understand what is a car, what is a tree, and you program that once, and then you go on the street in Berlin or in Shanghai, wherever, and they still understand, even if you drive right or left in Great Britain or somewhere, what is happening, because they don't need the rules, they learn. And that is the important part which happens now with these deep learning algorithms, which across the board enable us to do many unthinkable things now in reality. And this is what will drive autonomous driving to reality in very few years as full autonomous cars. And we have very high skills in this regard. We have hundreds of people in our company who work in this field and to make us, I'm pretty much convinced at that point of time, within the car industry, the leading manufacturer of autonomous car developments. But we know that we are not the only ones working on that, whether it's Google or whether it's Uber. And therefore, this is not our benchmark anymore. The rest of the car industry, we see other people challenging us, and that's a good thing because competition ultimately drives progress. I would like to talk about a third car, which is our Car2Go. We have meanwhile 1.3 million customers, we have 50,000 vehicles, and we are the world's biggest provider for free-floating car sharing. And for instance, here in Berlin, we will now in July start to add Mercedes cars, so far these are smarts, to these fleets as well to even further grow that business for us. Of course, this is just one element. We have many other aspects which have the overall objective to drive our company, and this is not just our objective, of course, from a car OEM to a mobility provider. Other elements which we use are, for instance, the Movil system, where you just go where from A to B you want to go, and then it offers you all the different transportation modes you can choose from, and different times it takes, different costs it's provided or you have to pay for, and then you can choose one and click and pay for it, and you go. And it will show you then with the navigation where to find the first, whatever it is, S-Bahn or bus or car to go, whatever you are looking for. We have MyTaxi, we have Black Lane, we have a number of things which we pursue in order to learn about these new possibilities. And of course, only when you connect all these dots, you come to a real systematic approach. Now, many people ask for good reason, well, how will you ever earn money with these mobility services? But when you really think about it and think about the future, you better ask the question, how will you, without these services in the future, still make money? Because we think they're essential. The transformation with individual mobility will take to be part of that. And definitely, we want to be at the forefront and want to create this change rather than being changed and then obviously helpless with whatever might happen. We are absolutely convinced that our industry will change dramatically. Definitely, Uber is one driving force in this change. And therefore, I was not surprised that when some of the media reported about our meeting here on stage, that they were seeing that as some kind of a fight. Headlines were Travis and Thatcher, the duel. I have to admit, it took me 3 weeks of workout till I was ready for that picture. But in any case, what is this relationship we're having with each other? And of course, we have met many times before. I think the best description was created by Kai when he was talking about frenemies, which is obviously something where some people said to me, friend and enemy in one. We call that marriage in Germany. But, so my definition is that Travis and myself, we are competitors, of course, and there might be many areas in the future where we compete with or against each other, but at the same time we are friends and we are cooperating and talking about things we can do together. And I think that is the best way to win the future, and that is probably the best starting point to enter now into our mutual Q&A with Kai. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dieter, Travis. So, we've got 5 minutes left for the talk now. So the questions have to be short and the answers even shorter. And let's try and dig somehow deeper into your relation. Travis, the biggest promise you give with Uber is that you will bring down the number of cars on the streets. Do you have any proof for this? First question. And second, how do you think Dieter feels about this vision? Bringing down the number of cars, or you're just talking about BMW cars?
I'm just talking, actually I'm not going to answer that question. You know, look, in China alone, we're talking about 30 million trips a month that are Uber pooled. Those are clear situations where you have 2 cars. You would have had 2 cars with 2 people and became 1 car. And you also saw our, the sort of visual for San Francisco.
China is one of its most important markets. So if you bring down the number of cars on the streets of China, you don't make Dieter happy.
What you could say is that when you share the cost of a car, you can afford a nicer car.
That makes a lot of sense. Dieter,
I'm a big fan of the Viano personally. I come to Europe mostly for the Viano. I want to bring them to the US if we can get them here.
So are you happy with his vision, or is Uber a danger to your business model? At the end, he wants the people to stop owning cars, and it means at the end to stop buying cars.
First of all, Travis wouldn't be so busy, I would have to ask him to come into our marketing department. That's a very nice answer. Well, it's not the first time that I'm confronted with this sentence. Mr. Kretschmann said at his first day in office as well that the objective is to reduce the number of cars. Talking about China with the statistics which Travis can bring, at the same time we are growing by 30-40% per year at that point of time. But anyway, of course, it makes a lot of sense to increase the use of assets, whatever kind, including cars, and when they sit 95% of the time, this is not efficient. And as this is obvious, it would be very stupid to go in defense mode and to try to explain anything different. What you have to do is to see the opportunities of technologies, which when they are disruptive always destroy something, but at the same time they create tremendous new opportunities. And that's why we try to be part of this new thing and then adjust accordingly.
But again, the car industry in Germany is not just any industry. It's the pride and it's the engine of our economy. And you said it before, when I was young, my biggest dream was, when I will be 18, I want to have my own car. The own car at the age of 18 was a kind of symbol of freedom. What if nowadays the young generation, the kids don't share these feelings, these dreams? If for them it's only important to come from point A to point B, what does it mean for the car industry?
There are 7 million people on this road, and these people you're describing, no doubt, there are young kids in many places, but there are many other places where people are as excited to get a new car, as they were 50 years ago in this country. So at that point of time, it's not something which is directly affecting us, but we have to think beyond today and tomorrow, and that's why we are involved in these developments.
Travis, you are now valued with nearly $7 billion. This is more than BMW, and this is nearly as much as Daimler. And you probably will surpass Daimler with that evaluation in the next couple of months. Did you ever consider simply buying one of these big car companies?
All you have to do is go to a German manufacturing facility, or the Mercedes, the Daimler design studio, or see how these cars are made, tested, and rigorously refined, and you will very quickly realize you do not want to make cars. And what I mean by this is not that I'm from LA, I love cars, but the process of making them is no small affair. And so I think in many ways it's not for us to buy cars, it's for us to work with the folks who make cars. Cars are not going away anytime soon, and companies like Uber are not going to be making them. And so we want to partner with the best manufacturers in the world so that our customers, the riders, ultimately can have a great experience, a great mobility experience in getting around cities.
But seriously, can you explain how can a company that does not produce anything, that has not been profitable for one day in its 7-year history, can be evaluated at $70 million? Why is that?
It's because, for instance, in the developed markets, we are profitable. Developing world, the emerging markets like China, India, etc., were massively unprofitable. And so once you see the unit economics in a particular city, and you see how we can go profitable in cities, and we can do it at scale across a country or a continent, it becomes really obvious how you can stack hundreds of cities, profitable cities, on top of one another, and make for a real business.
What do you tell your investors when they ask for the IPO or asking you for profitability? Do they ask you, or don't they ask you?
Sometimes they ask, and what I say is, look, we have a moral obligation. That's probably true. We have a moral obligation to ultimately find liquidity for the investors, but I think even more importantly, we have thousands of employees that own stock. Blood, sweat, and tears to make Uber a great company. And so I say we are going to IPO as late as humanly possible, but it will be one day before my employees and their significant others come to the office with pitchforks and torches. We will IPO the day before that. Do you get it?
Yes.
Looking at it like I don't get it. Okay. This is the reason a lot of people say like Facebook went public. Well, when ultimately they had to create enough liquidity for their employees. And our employees work hard, and ultimately that stock, that equity that they work for should be liquid. And ultimately you should go do that. But if you can stay unbureaucratic, if you can keep your employees from having to, of refreshing on finance.google.com every 10 minutes to see what the stock price is, your company's going to be more geared towards the future and it's going to move faster.
So how patient do they have to be? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
I don't know. Like I said, it's going to be somewhere between 1 year and 10.
Dieter.
Yeah, I had you there for a second.
You already mentioned Car2Go, you mentioned Blacklane, you mentioned MyTaxi, but competitors like Toyota, they've heavily invested in Uber. Volkswagen invested in the Uber competitor Get. Did you ever consider investing in Uber, or are there probably already secret negotiations going on with Travis? And I recommend you to do it here. There's no better place to announce a partnership than the NOAH conference.
I understand your position. But to say it clearly, an investment in itself we could put in any company where we would assume that this would make a good business case, investing in and taking the money back sometime later. When we invest in this field, we do it for strategic reasons, and this has to go in sync with any kind of agreements what we want to do together. And therefore, if the one would be a given, the other one would be a logical consequence or part of it.
But why investing in Blacklane and not in Uber?
Blacklane, we have a dominating impact. We are learning, we are influencing the activity of this company to accomplish the same. With Uber, we would have to invest perhaps 35 billion or something like that. And we are a very, very profitable company, but that's not something we consider in the next few months.
Travis, would you like to have a Daimler as an investor in Uber?
I mean, how should I answer this one? The dominant impact thing is one I'd probably try to avoid if there was an investment agreement. But the $35 billion I'd be up for.
Actually, it looks like you are already doing business with Daimler. There are rumors around that you ordered actually 100,000 self-driving Mercedes S-limousines. Can you confirm that?
I cannot. I have not signed a $10 billion check to buy 100,000 S-classes. As much as I'd like to put them in my garage, I have not made that deal.
Do you know anything about that deal?
Just want to say I met Travis first time this afternoon, but I'm always correct in what I'm saying. No, I can't.
Okay. Talking about investments, Dieter, Uber just surprised us the other day when they announced they took an investment from Saudi Arabia, 3.5 billion into Uber by the state of Saudi Arabia. One of your biggest stakeholders is already Kuwait. Would you accept Saudi Arabia as a major investor in Daimler?
I mean, we definitely have no intention and no reason to increase equity in our company. Other than that, our stock is freely available, and we're happy basically about any investor buying our stock, and they don't have to ask us for permission.
Travis, do you understand that there has been criticism on Uber taking so much money from Saudi Arabia?
I mean, there was some, but I think for the most part, people saw a couple things.
I mean, you know that Saudi Arabia is not only investing in companies like Uber, but they are financing around the world a lot of things we actually do not like so much.
Yeah, I understand that. And so I think there's two things. One, is Uber operating in Saudi Arabia? And the answer to that is yes, right? In a place where women cannot drive today, that is the law of that particular country. We are providing some kind of mobility solution for women in Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, 80% of our customers in Saudi Arabia are women. We believe, maybe it's a pragmatic or practical approach, but we believe that's progress. And if we can take investment from a pension fund or investment fund in Saudi Arabia that is looking to lead the way in terms of economic and social reforms and invest in the thing that is bringing this kind of progress, not just on mobility for women, but also for entrepreneurism with the drivers and the partners that we work with, and invest in something that that inspiration started in Saudi Arabia, but it was also global. That's positive. We're going to take that money and do more empowerment of women. We're going to take that money and we're going to bring more mobility to cities and bring that positive impact to Saudi Arabia as well as the rest of the world. And I think as they start to take their money and invest it in other things other than oil, other than those other things that we don't like, it's a pretty positive thing for the money that they're putting into Uber, given the kind of impact we're bringing to cities and to people's lives in those cities.
Dieter, as we saw in your presentation, self-driving cars are one of the really important future projects for Daimler. Is the self-driving car at the end a way to disrupt what Travis is doing?
Travis is smart himself, and I was extremely impressed when I visited Uber for the first time, a company which existed at that time, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and is the poster child of a disruptive company for many other areas. That he said what keeps him awake at night is the thought what threat could exist there which would disrupt his business model. And obviously came to the conclusion it's the autonomous car. And therefore, of course, we are from different angles going into a similar direction, and when we have our car to go, soon it will be car to come. And you will not go 400 meters or 200 meters to find a car to go, but you will push your iPhone or whatever smartphone it might be, and the car to go comes to you. And then we are pretty much in the same arena. And therefore clear, as I said, we can potentially, without confirming anything, cooperate in some fields, but at the same time we might become competitors, and that is fine.
What is actually happening to all the Uber drivers once you are successful with self-driving cars?
Well, look, I think...
Because they are now your biggest asset.
Yeah, sure. No, I agree. It starts with, all the benefits. You have to first put in the context of what are all the benefits of self-driving. 1 million people a year die in cars every year. Tens of millions of people are injured. When the autonomous car is really doing its thing, that all goes away. And you think about the newspaper and the things we worry about, how many of those things match up to 1 million people dying a year? Not a lot. You talk about the time we give back to people, how cities change, congestion, pollution, drunk driving, all of this stuff going away. The positives are there. It is definitely progress. And then the question is, do you want to be part of the future or do you want to resist it? And in so many ways, Uber's DNA, our background is, in some ways changing how the taxi industry works or how transportation and taxis work. And we don't want to be like the guys who came before us. We are going to be part of the future. And so then you say, how do we optimistically lead through it? It's going to happen. Google's been working on it for almost 10 years. Daimler's been working on it for decades. And a number of other companies are working on this. And so it's going to happen. And now the question is, how do you partner with cities? How do you partner in a way that optimistically leads through that transition? The upside, I would say, is that it's going to take a long time. It's not like all of a sudden the billion cars on the planet, like with the snap of a finger, are going to be autonomous. It's going to take decades for that to take place. And so it will be a slow ramp, not an instant.
You're the expert on that, Dieter. When will the future arrive regarding autonomous driving?
Well, I would say in 5 to 7 years we'll have, not everywhere without restrictions, but the first areas where we see fully autonomous cars in operation. Provided that the regulator accompanies us.
Coming to regulation, coming to the taxi topic. You're very successful in over 60 countries worldwide, but especially Europe is difficult ground for you. But it's not because the customers wouldn't like the service, it's due to regulation. Is Europe the enemy of innovation, and how do you want to overcome this regulation topic?
Well, first, a lot of times when I talk to European regulators, I have to let them know that this is not just a European thing. This is something we see everywhere. It just so happens that in the US, we're 2 years ahead of schedule, because we started the US earlier, right? And so we have similar problems in the US. I've had existential problems in cities across the US, and had those situations in Europe as well. They're just more recent here in Europe. Now, there are rules that are strange. There's something called the return to garage rule here in Germany, where if I call for a car that's not a taxi, of course, and it's 3 minutes away, by law, that car has to go to its garage, park, and then turn around. And if the car just comes to me directly, that driver is committing a crime. That is law today here in Germany. And so there are a set of laws that make it so that there is no competition to a taxi, and it's anti-competitive and ultimately creates a situation where people aren't served. And so we have to tell that story. We have to tell the story of the upside for cities, tens of thousands of jobs, less pollution, less congestion, etc. But also talk about what are these rules and why do they exist. And I like to say the old rules, sorry this is going a little long, but the old rules used to be new rules. They used to be new and controversial. There was a time when those new rules were fresh, those old rules were fresh ink on paper. But they get to become old rules and then replaced by new ones as long as those new rules bend towards people and towards progress.
Especially Germany is hard, and you had to give up service in a couple of the cities. Have you given up on Germany, or are you moving on?
I'm very patient here in Germany.
Dieter, talking about regulation, in order to achieve innovation, growth, in order to achieve enough jobs, how has regulation been configured for the future? Could you imagine probably to support Travis in his fight against regulation? I mean, talking about the taxi market, I think every second taxi in Germany is a Mercedes.
I'm in general convinced if something provides benefits and is good, it will ultimately succeed. And when you focus your effort and your energy in defending against this change, you will ultimately suffer, if not die. And you're better off when you try to be part of this change and be the spearhead of this change. And that's why I'm never in favor of protection and any fences you put around you. I'm a friend of competition and of innovation and of investment into innovation. Therefore, in Europe, of course, we have to make sure that there's a level playing ground and that there are no unfair things going on. And when we discuss these tax issues, for instance, I think we need stronger regulation to avoid this tax evasion. But when it comes to innovation, we should focus on our own innovative power. And then we are up for competition with whomever, and then we will succeed.
Is it a correct impression that whereas in the US, especially in the Silicon Valley, technology is mostly seen as a chance to improve quality of life, especially in Germany, new technologies are widely seen as a threat and not as a chance? And how could this happen due to the fact that we used to be a country for decades that loved the engineers?
I mean, the word German Angst is used in all parts of the world. So there seems to be something within our character which supports that. There are obviously other characteristics which help us to be relatively successful as well. But in any case, I agree with your observation, and this is a threat for us, because standstill is certainly bringing us backwards. The good thing is that I haven't seen any new technology where so far their curiosity and the interest was so strong as in autonomous driving. When we talk about gene technology and many other things, it was all let us alone. In this case, most of the politicians want to sit in these cars and want to be the ones who provide for testing areas. So there seems to be some sexiness to that, and it's very important that we don't screw that up by any too fast and not responsible moves, because when there would be some negative things happening on a big scale, this could be a major setback. So I'm not asking for regulation which tomorrow morning allows everything to happen. But let's learn together how step by step to see what the technology can provide, safe, and then let's allow that and go the next step.
You've been now CEO of Daimler for 10 years. What do you think you can learn from Travis as CEO?
I mean, I mentioned one thing before. I was deeply impressed when he told me, well, I'm thinking who will disrupt me? And I have to change my business model, which is just starting and which is just succeeding at that point of time. So this kind of strategic forward thinking is extremely important. And I think we, as a tendency in Germany, we are a long-term thinker as well. But the other element is guts. We need more courage. Of course, we have to look at risks, and of course, when you run a company with 280,000 people, you cannot just follow your gut feeling and say, well, if it goes wrong, then it goes wrong, so what? You can't do that. You have the responsibility for 280,000 families and your suppliers and so on. But still, in general, we need more guts, and that's the kind of cultural revolution we try to provide in our company. And I say, well, let's become culturally the Uber, or what Daimler has been 130 years ago, because we were a startup in a garage. You know, at that time, we provided the garages. There would be no startups without us.
Travis, the other way around. You're already CEO for 7 years now. What do you learn from Dieter?
So I visited Daimler in Stuttgart and got to see how they make cars. And I was referring to that earlier. And as an engineer myself, and somebody who, with my dad when I was a kid, would work on cars a lot, it's really amazing to see all of the refined execution and excellence that Daimler puts into making their product. And that starts with a vision for the consumer that is very aspirational. And so seeing something so refined is, in some ways, they're building magic that we've gotten used to. But guess what? When that thing goes autonomous, there's a whole new kind of magic about what that experience is going to look like in a car. That's going to be very interesting and inspire. And I think Daimler has the ability to inspire, hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people with a new way to experience moving around.
Question to you both. 50 years from now, who is bigger? Uber or Daimler?
And in 50 years, I'll probably be drooling on myself and not really able to do much because of all the stress that Daimler's creating by pushing me into this autonomous thing.
Dieter, who knows, 50 years from now, perhaps we are one company.
It's getting interesting. So, last question right now. Dieter, let's imagine you're coming to Berlin in 2030 and you're stepping out of the Berlin airport, which airport ever. Who will drive you then to the NOAA conference? A self-driving car, the Uber guys, or?
Well, in both cases it would be a self-driving car. As when horses were used to pull the carriages, and today they don't have this task anymore. We're having more horses than at these times. There might be the utilitarian part of transportation being more shared, more autonomous non-use, and still it will be a great thing to drive in a beautiful Mercedes Cabriolet in the nice surroundings of Berlin and enjoy just the fact of driving.
Travis, do you actually have a driving license and do you own a car?
So I own a car. It's a... Oh, you're messing with me. Okay, I have a very old car. It's a 1999 BMW M3 convertible. Now, the alternator belt is broke, and my driver's license has expired, so it's been a while.
Travis?
I like that because I need objects of conquest.
Yeah. Travis, Dieter, thank you so much. We are in time. We did not announce a partnership formally tonight on this stage, but I saw a lot of partnership on this stage. Thank you very much. That was great.